Alright guys, today we're going to be talking about Tropical Depression 13. It's currently located in the middle of the main development region around 40 west. Believe this is the equator down here, so this is about 13 degrees north. Yeah, 12.5 degrees north, 40.2 degrees west. It's where the storm center is currently located. It is expected to become a major hurricane within the next 4 to 5 days as it treks westward and northwestward north of the islands, the Leeward Islands, and Puerto Rico, and north of there. But there's still going to be impact from it, especially if it takes that southern end of the cone, so we just have to watch it. And then eventually we'll get into the western Atlantic where we have to see where it goes from there. But almost all the models show a major hurricane in the very near future. If we look at the cone, which I believe that's the cone. I gotta find the actual cone center, but we'll read this. So, the environment around the depression, according to the forecast discussion, is conducive for development. The only factor that's hurting the storm's development right now is the wind shear. Slight wind shear just coming onto it. But you mentioned in the forecast discussion that in the next 2 to 3 days, the shear will relax, since you're going to have a upper level ridge, which is a upper level anticyclone, which usually fans out the outflow for tropical systems allowing them to breathe, will form over top of the system, and the system will also be moving over 30 degrees Celsius waters, which is 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's a record for this particular part of the world. This is normally something that you do not see outside the Gulf of Mexico, and this should support rapid intensification, which will be 35 mile per hour increase in wind or a 25 millibar drop within the span of 24 hours. So, rapid intensification is looking very likely with this storm, and if it were to get its name early today, it would be Lee. They do mention in this discussion that the forecast is bullish for their first forecast, means it's very strong. But even this forecast is conservative compared to the actual consensus, because all of them show higher intensities almost. And then here's the actual initialization, the strength forecast for the next 5 days. It's 35 miles per hour right now, expected to get its name within the next 12 hours. It's supposed to be a strong tropical storm by tomorrow, which is Wednesday. And then by around 2 days out, it should be a hurricane, and then after 3 days, it should be turning into a major hurricane and getting pretty strong as it moves north and west of the islands. North and west of the islands as time goes on, but we still have to check where it goes within that cone. Try and pull up the cone here, although that's not going to work too well. I think it should be somewhere in here. Cones and warnings. There it is. Finally found it. So, on this cone, today it's already 11 a.m. when they did this update. The 2 p.m. update should be coming out soon. I have to check for that. It could already have his name by now, so we will actually check the homepage again. We'll check the homepage once more. It's still a tropical depression, so should be fine. So on the next update, it should be a tropical storm according to this. Stays that way for until around 8 p.m. on Wednesday. Becomes a hurricane overnight, Wednesday night into Thursday morning. And then as it approaches the islands as the weekend comes, it becomes a major hurricane that's just moving north of the islands. And it should become rather large at this time. Now, the cone encompasses the northern edge of the Leeward Islands up here. Now, I think these are the windwards, or these are the leewards. I already forgot. The Lesser Antilles, we'll just use that. So the northern part of Lesser Antilles, the southern part of this cone, would take the storm, if it takes that part of the cone, would take it right next to the islands. Not making landfall on the islands, but right next to the islands. That will bring, at this hurricane intensity, will bring the hurricane force winds onshore, the storm surge, the heavy rain for hours and hours on end, because it's not moving too far. in this graphic. It's not moving too far. It's not like it's moving from. It's not zipping along, as I would say. It's moving at a decent pace, but not fast enough to get the storm out of there. At a decent clip. So that will bring impacts to Puerto Rico, northern Lesser Antilles. Some rain for the Dominican Republic if it does take this track. If it takes the northern end of this cone, it's more likely that you'll see less wind impacts. Less rain because the storm center is not over you. Storm center is not nearby. You would see less wave action to a degree. You still see plenty of wave action and rip currents. It doesn't matter if the storm's like right on top of you or it's out here. Rip currents are near a certainty in this area, regardless, since the storm is so close and it's going to be very strong. So I would not be going to the beach at all over the weekend, and even starting on Friday or Thursday, I would not be going to the beach if you live in the islands down there, due to the rip currents and the rough surf. And most likely, according to the cone, although there's a chance that it gets out this cone where it gets out north of it, or it gets out even farther south of it. There's a chance of that happening, although that's less likely. Since it's taking the middle of this cone most likely, that would bring the storm north of the islands, but still close enough to bring those rip currents. Probably still get some rain out of that. Possible that you get tropical storm force winds, but that's really if it takes the more southern end of the cone. The farther south it goes in the cone, the more likely the tropical storm force winds will be there, and the stronger they will be. So the farther south in the cone, the more impacts you will see directly, but you will still have all the ocean impacts going on. If we just look at, well, the wind field, it's not there yet. We'll look at something else. There we go. So earliest arrival time of tropical storm force winds would be in the northern Lesser Antilles, starting. If we're getting into the middle of the island chain northward, the earliest it will start is around Friday afternoon. Friday afternoon north of about 15 degrees north. And then from there, in the northern Lesser Antilles, begins Friday evening into Friday night. And then as it's approaching Puerto Rico, it starts coming in Saturday morning. Is when the wind impacts start coming in. There's a higher likelihood of that happening in the northern, in like the U.S. Virgin Islands and northward. Higher chance of that happening in the areas closer to where the storm is going to be, where the chances are roughly around 20 to 40% for tropical storm force winds. Earliest arrival time. If we were to look at the most likely time, however, most likely the storm winds will be arriving in the Antilles, the northern Antilles, by Saturday morning guaranteed. So they can start rolling in Friday night, but the winds should really be there by the time Saturday morning comes and the sun begins to rise over this area. Similar thing in the other Antilles. The impacts, if we're looking most likely, start on Saturday and continue throughout most of the day. So, earliest Friday, you should be prepared by Friday. If you have preparations to prepare for the storm, should be prepared by Friday. But the most likely scenario is that you're going to get impacts starting Saturday from the wind, but you'll get the water and the ocean impacts from the waves and rip currents a few days before. Maybe starting tomorrow, as the storm gets stronger. Starting tomorrow and Thursday, the wave impacts will start coming in first, and then it will continue to go downhill from there. But if the storm is closer, then the conditions will go down even more, because the actual storm will be intensifying quickly as it's coming through. So the farther south in that cone it is, the stronger those impacts are going to be, and the more you have to prepare for. So I just keep an eye on this. If this does shift south, you must be prepared. You must be prepared for at least, if it does shift south, you should start preparing more and more for hurricane conditions. If it shifts north, you can prepare less for it, but it's still too early to tell. We have to wait until the time comes in the next 1 to 2 days. Key messages: the Tropical Depression 13 is forecast to become a major hurricane by this weekend. Could bring impacts to the Leeward Islands by this time. Yeah, Leeward Islands, okay. While it is too soon to determine the location and magnitude of these possible impacts, interests should monitor it. Yeah, so it's too early to tell, but the farther south it moves in that cone, or if it moves far south outside of the cone, the more impacts you'll see in the islands. The farther north it moves, if it gets picked up sooner, the less impacts you'll see, but you'll still have all the ocean impacts there. Now, we can look at some weather models. We'll look at the GFS and stuff over here first. Look at these models, then we'll look at the ensembles. Then we'll look at the actual weather models. But first, we'll take a look at the actual storm on satellite imagery. This is on Tropical Tidbits, the website. All these models are on Tropical Tidbits because it's the easier website for me to use. So you can see that convection is declining a bit. It is the afternoon. This will be expected because usually in tropical cyclones, even in the tropics, just in general, thunderstorms tend to die down in the afternoon over the sea. But then in the morning, when the sun is rising, they tend to be at their peak when there's the most convection. So this will be anticipated, but as the sun begins to set, there should be more convection firing up around the storm center, naturally, and that should help it start strengthening more quickly. But it can still do convective bursts throughout the day. So we have to watch that carefully. Continues going, but it does have that low level center. It does have the structure there with it. That shear is the only thing keeping it back right now, but once it abates, it should be off to the races for how it goes, how strong it can get. It really just depends on how fast it can get its structure like really compact and up to speed, where it can actually take advantage of those warm waters and get that rapid intensification to ensue. Now we're going to look out only to the next 5 to 7 days. See, this is Lee right here. Not Lee, this is Tropical Depression 13, but this would be Lee, because this will probably form very soon. On GFS model, in 24 hours, is already a tropical storm. Mid-range, probably getting strong. As we go on to the next 48 hours, it's already a hurricane or a strong tropical storm. Move westward. In 72 hours, it's approaching the door of major hurricane status, just east of the islands. It's getting pretty close now. You might start seeing some rain impacts coming in. We have to see. This will be on Friday, 8 a.m. in the morning, just where the storm will be according to the GFS model. We take it out to Saturday morning. The storm is a major hurricane, looking at Category 4 strength, and it is northeast of the islands. It's bringing some rain, as you can see here. Definitely bringing the rip currents and the waves, but the tropical storm force winds and the strong impacts and the heavy rainfall should be offshore enough to be safe. But we can't let our guard down, as that's very close to the islands. Continues getting stronger as we move into Sunday. I believe, yeah, this will be Sunday. Moving to Sunday in the afternoon. We'll take it out longer. As we move into Monday, it's still strong in North of the Islands, but it's in the ocean. And then from this point onward, we'll stop at 1 hour 168. From this point, we have to see where the storm goes. If the ridge stays in long enough, it can push farther west. If the trough is able to pick it up earlier, it can get pulled north faster. We just have to see where it is. So we were to look at upper dynamics on, let's say, 500 millibar high MSLP. The ridge is still there, but the trough is cutting into it on the west side. So in this scenario, if we were to just extrapolate just a little bit further, the trough will be able to pick it up. We'll start picking up, but that's a late pull, and it's too far out. But the trough will start picking up pretty late, and that will bring the storm close enough to land and bring impacts. So the longer this ridge stays here, the farther west the storm goes. So even if it does begin to recurve in that scenario, even if it does start to recurve, it will be recurving too late, and now we'll still have land interaction and bring impacts to land in that scenario. So we still have to keep an eye on that. We look at the CMC model. Pretty similar stories. Back it up. So this is depression right there. It begins strengthening. It's not as strong within 24 hours. Tropical storm maybe. And then it begins intensifying as it begins moving towards the islands. Still a tropical storm, hasn't intensified quickly yet. But as it moves closer to the islands within 3 days, then the intensity really starts increasing pretty quickly. So it moves north of the islands, it's a hurricane now. So within 5 days, around Sunday, on Sunday in the evening, you have a hurricane that's to the northeast of the islands. It's to the northeast of the islands. And it will still be bringing those swells, but it should be far enough away to not bring the heavy rain and strong winds to the islands directly in that scenario. And then it moves westward, and yet again from this point we have to see where it goes. If we look at the 500 millibar height on the Canadian model, the ridge is still there. It's a trough over the United States East Coast. We take that out, it gets picked up farther east, and that would bring it up north. It's too far out, but that will bring it up north and should lessen the land interaction. But that could be a problem for Canada, for the southeastern part of Canada, the Canadian Maritimes, Nova Scotia right here, and Newfoundland. If that gets picked up and doesn't get shoved directly out east to sea, it just gets pulled north and not so much east. So that will still be an issue. So we have to keep an eye on that. We look at the ensemble models. This is the GEFS, the Global Forecasting System ensembles. This was the 6C run, so I think this was in the morning or when they just gave this tropical depression status. Still on tropical tippets. So you can see the storm is right here at the moment. Almost all the models show a very strong storm within the next few days. Wi-Fi is dying, by the way, so might not be able to show the other models, unfortunately. But from this point, you can see almost all the models have the storm being relatively strong as it's moving westward. So by the time you're getting out a few days, by past 3 days, you're starting to see. Past 3 days, you're starting to see a hurricane, and then you're starting to get a major hurricane within the 5 to 7 day window. 5 to 7 day window north of the islands. There are some that take it more south, and that will bring more impacts to the islands directly. But the vast majority of them take it north of the island, so where you'll still feel swells, but you're not going to get massive severe impacts from the actual storm itself, the winds and the rain. You're not going to get that in a storm surge in this scenario. But that does recurve the storm, and I believe Bermuda is somewhere in here. I believe. Somewhere in there. It might be here. I think it might be here, actually. It's hard to tell. There's so many lines. But in this scenario, Bermuda will have a big problem, as you have a major hurricane potentially coming up from the south towards them. Now the only thing is at what point does it recurve? At what point does it recurve? As that would drastically impact where the impacts, how impactful the storm will be on Bermuda, which will be Lee. Because if it's far enough out, they might not get the major hurricane force winds, but they'll definitely get the tropical storm force winds, possibly, or they'll get something else from it. Heavy rain. They'll definitely get the rip currents, the tides, and the surge. Not the surge, but the waves. But if the storm center gets pretty close to the island, you'll probably see major hurricane force winds on the actual island itself, which would be very impactful, as well as heavy rain. They are built up for major hurricanes They do have the infrastructure for it. But as for wind impacts, the closer the storm gets down, and if it recurves at the wrong time, that could bring the strongest part of the storm directly over the island, and that's not a good scenario for them. So we have to keep an eye on that. As for the GEPS models, different ensembles, the GFS doesn't have the storm getting super strong. You have it getting at 980 to like 970, but still a general trend. They have it going northwest and then recurving, and a lot of these have these recurving west of Bermuda, and that will bring the east side of the storm onto Bermuda if it gets close enough. So that will bring the strongest winds, the strongest surge possible, and the strongest heavy rainfall in that scenario. So if we were to go back to this, look where Bermuda is on the map. It's around 65 degrees west. Yeah, around 65 degrees west. Okay, so if we draw a line up, almost all of these models take, at least on the current ensembles from the GEFS, take a very strong major hurricane near Bermuda within the next, after, I believe it's 6 days out. So they take a very strong hurricane near Bermuda in the next 7 days. That can still change, but if it recurves down here, and it were to follow that track, that would be a real possibility. So we have to keep an eye on that. And that seems like a decent consensus from the models. So I'll keep you guys updated on that as well. You can also check this model. This is Invest 95L. This was earlier. It says, do not use this map to make decisions, take official info. This is correct info. It's correct information. But this is just to see where the possibilities for storm track will be. So they start recurving around 60 to 65 west, and then these start moving northwest at the end of the run 7 days out. So we still have to watch this. This was initialized yesterday, so we still have to watch this. This is important because we have to make sure that we know where the turn is happening, so we know where the storm center and the big impacts, the actual storm surrounding it, will be. And then that can allow us to actually tell who's going to get the most impacts, who's going to get what, and where. And even if the storm misses you, you'll still get the rip currents and stuff. The storm itself, not the storm center, the storm. If the storm misses you, you'll get rip currents. You get rip currents and high seas. The storm center misses you, but you're still in the storm, you'll get those tropical storm force winds and that heavy rainfall. But you won't get those hurricane force winds unless you're pretty close to the center. But that really depends on how large the eye wall is and how big future Lee's wind field will be. So we still have to watch out for that. Ocean heat content, if we're looking at this, we have, this is in kilojoules per centimeter squared. Basically, if you have if ocean heat content is above 50, that's pretty decent for tropical cyclones. This wake here, this cold wake, let me just get a bigger pen. This cold wake here is due to Franklin, right here. And this little bit of a gouging is from what was Idalia, but there's still plenty energy to support another major hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. Where future Lee is going, it's somewhere, I believe it's somewhere in here. It has plenty of ocean heat content that's in decent values of about 75 to 100, even 125, that can easily chip through, and has plenty of enough energy to sustain itself and get it to major hurricane status, so it can keep upwelling that warmer water and keep feeding its circulation. The storm, convection, it can keep doing that over and over again as there's more and more water keeps coming up. Now, if it sits there and stalls, this will become an issue for it. This will be an issue for it because then it runs out of fuel. But it should be moving through at a decent pace, not fast, but not slow either. So this is more than enough to get it to that major hurricane status, or even stronger maybe Category 5 or higher. It's plenty enough energy for it to do that. So the ocean is not the problem. The storm just needs to get its structure together for it to really go boom. To really get strong. And get those hot towers moving, and then clear out that eye and get a large symmetrical storm, similar to what we saw with Franklin earlier in August, similar to what that looked like. But this, I have a feeling that this one's going to look even more immaculate than that, since it's going to be stronger. But it's going to be more. But it shouldn't. I shouldn't focus on how good it looks, because it's going to be a threat to land potentially. We still don't know, so we have to watch out for that. So it will definitely be strong. We don't know how strong, and it's potential to get very strong, but we have to figure out where it's going. So we have this model. Okay, all of these are loaded, so this is good for me. At least my Wi-Fi cut out after I had all these loaded, so as long as I don't close out these tabs, we should be fine. Okay, so this is where storm is right now, roughly. As we take this out on the half speed, this is a hurricane analytical forecasting system. This is based on the global forecasting system parameters. Same with a dwarf and a half A. But we're looking at the parent so we can see sea surface temperatures, and we can really look at what's going on here. Only sea surface temperatures, because my Wi-Fi is down, so I can only look at that. So as we go past into the next 24 hours, we're seeing a storm, 2 a.m. Sunday, September, seeing a storm that's getting into warmer waters, 29 Celsius, farther west 30, strengthening to a 997 tropical storm. So it continues moving, it gets to a 990, it begins strengthening quicker within the next, on day 3, as it gets into that warmer water, and you see upwelling back here as it begins taking that energy out. It quickly intensifies from a 970 exactly 3 days out, which is 2 a.m. from now, at least from the official 60 run, to a major hurricane within 4 days. A pretty strong one. That's a Category 4 within the next 4 days, and then from there it strengthens even faster. 920, getting close to Category 5 status here, and then it drops to a 910, a 913, 910. So this would be a Category 5 hurricane according to this, as it plows through this warm water that's about 30 degrees Celsius, and there's even more of it to the farther west. But at some point it should recurve into this water, into waters that are cooler up north. So it begins steady weakening once it starts moving into cooler waters. This up here, if you guys are wondering, this is what happened from Franklin. Franklin moved through this area, it mixed up the water. That's why this area is cooler. So this is from tropical cyclone upwelling. It's the same thing that's happening back here. This is tropical cyclone upwelling. But the ocean heat content is not as deep up here as it is down here. So this water down here should be able to warm up enough for the next storm. Should still be there, so a storm that does pass through here again won't get as strong until it gets into the actual Caribbean itself, where this warm water is still untapped. So that's a look at the sea surface temperatures. Sea surface temperatures are not an issue for the storm at all. Now, if we look at the actual model itself from a rain perspective, we'll take this out until the end. So within 9 hours, it's already turning into a tropical storm. About oh, I didn't load these. This is unfortunate. Dang it. Wi-Fi is down. I didn't load these. Either. So I can only look at the parent model. That's unfortunate. My Wi-Fi is down. But if we're just gonna look at it from this perspective, we could tell that you guys basically got the idea. The storm right now is at tropical depression status. That's where the storm is right now. It's at tropical depression status. as it moves westward, it gets stronger into a tropical storm. By day 3, should be a hurricane, and then on day 3 and day 4 turns into a major hurricane, at least according to the have-to-be model. And then as it moves westward on day 5, just north of the islands, that becomes a Category 5 storm. But even under this scenario, the storm will be rather large at this point in time. So even though the storm is here, you're still going to feel impacts from the waves here. Probably going to see some rain if the storm is large enough. I don't expect strong winds, though. We'll have to see. But the storm will definitely be very strong at this point, so you'll definitely feel its presence, whether it be from a pressure difference, some rain falling. You'll definitely see it in the surf in the ocean. You'll definitely see it there. But looking at this is pretty far. This is pretty decently north of where the islands will be. But if this moves farther south, like go back to the cone. If we go back to the cone, if this doesn't go north like that, hold on, let me just get this. Just if this doesn't go north like that, instead takes a more southerly route, not like super far south, but it takes like something like this. So it still misses the islands, but it moves a little bit farther south. Like it scooches from this position to somewhere like right here. Then that will bring more impacts. We just have to see is the storm, when it actually gets into this area, is it farther north? Is it farther south? Where is it exactly? And then it's much easier to actually give an actual like forecast for impacts in this area. But if you live in Puerto Rico, the Lesser Antilles, Northern Lesser Antilles, which would be the Leeward Islands, potentially Dominica and Bermuda, and even on the east coast of the United States and Canadian Maritimes, I will keep an eye on the system because we still do not know where it exactly is going to go. We know it will be very strong, but we have to pinpoint where it's going to go for the best forecast for you guys. And even with this, I would still keep up with local officials and like your National Hurricane Center, just to make sure that you know what to expect for you. And if anything changes, they'll be the first to let you know about it. Alright guys, I hope this video was informative for you. We'll keep an eye on the system. This is something that's very important to keep an eye on. This is why I do this type of stuff. So, hope this helped. And we'll get this video up as soon as the internet comes back online. I'll see you guys then. So when this video comes online, tell me how you felt about it. If there's anything else you guys want to know. And I think that's going to be it. So I'll see you guys then. Bye!